This is my wife, Carol. Today we're going to do your oral history. And we want to start out by asking you your full name, where and when you were born. So let us know your full name.
Well, it's Gerald Edgar von Holt.
Oh Lord, spell that last name.
V-O-N,
Just a minute.
capital H-O-L-T.
V-O-N.
Capital H-O-L-T.
Yeah,
Okay.
von Holt.
Okay, Gerald, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you call
They
him
call you
Jerry?
Gerald or Jerry?
Yeah, they do call me Jerry. Do you want my middle initial or name?
Whatever, if you got one.
Edgar was my middle.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Jerry,
And,
when were you born?
I was born May the 16th, 1930.
All right, you're
Korean.
just a year younger than I.
I was Korean.
Yeah.
In Quincy, Illinois.
Okay.
I don't know if you want the hospital. Blessing Hospital, Quincy,
Okay.
Illinois.
Okay, Jerry. Do you remember much before you went to school? Can you recall anything that happened in your life before you went to kindergarten?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was one of them kids that kind of. I mean, I strayed away from home, and I'd be maybe with other kids, you know,
Uh-huh.
and we'd be uptown a lot and everything. But my mom, after a while, she seen I could get around pretty good, but. Some of the older ones, you know, I might have been. I know one time in this Camp Point, Illinois, is where I was brought up, and that little town was 30 miles from Quincy, Illinois.
Okay.
Quincy's the biggest town around, and one time Dillinger and his gang went through there. We were down. Well, we'd go down the alley to the corner, opposite corner, and down there was an old steam engine, and there was a grader and something like that, and a roller maybe, and we used to go down and play on that. And so we were sitting on that, and we heard the sirens, and here over the railroad tracks in the middle of town, they just hit that and they bounced across, and they went on up the boulevard there to right straight out to towards our city park, about a mile out edge of town there. And then they cut over and went to Carthage, Illinois. Up in the woods, they caught some of them, but they didn't get them all. Just got
Really?
a few. Yeah, the police was right behind them. And I remember, I saw this car. It was a brand new car, like a 35, I
Yeah.
think like a 35 or 36 Ford. And it was had a rag top, but it was open, you know. And boy, it was speeding like everything coming through town. And guys in there, but we didn't know what was going on. Just knew something wasn't right. And they had robbed a bank somewhere 20 or 30 miles from there, and they were chasing them. And I guess they got some of them about 40 miles north of where this town, where my town was. But I remember that, and like there was a bunch of the kids, farm boys, on our school, it was 3 floors, and it was 3 floors. It was grade school on the bottom and high school above. They went up the fire escapes, and they put a wagon. They just assembled a wagon and then put it back together on top of the schoolhouse.
That must have been about Halloween time, huh?
Yeah, and they took that they took a tractor from the farm and hauled that steam engine up on the bricks in front of the school. Bricks was quite a ways, you know, and they hauled it right up to the steps of the school. They put a cow in the music room and had a bucket of salsa.
Oh,
Oh God, what a mess. So they really thought they'd done something. It was a hell of a prank, you know. But they did get caught, and it cost their folks an awful lot of money. I mean, back then it was maybe what, $1,000 a piece or something.
Wow.
You know, but that's a lot of money. That was then, like 10,000 now, maybe.
Yeah.
in the
I bet the
30s.
kids didn't get no time out for that.
Oh, no. Yeah, and then, I remember in 1941 or two, they had a scrap, we used to have scrap drive at
Yes.
school. Looked like a junkyard on one side, on one playground, they just made that for the scrap drive. And my dad had traded for, he had a garage, he sold Pontiac and Packard, and Crosley in 50 when that come out, or 49 or
Yeah.
whatever. And I was in service when I went in 47 to 56. But anyway, they had the scrap drive, and there was an old fellow by the name of Gus Honecker out north of town, had a 1918 Chevy. And it still run good, but it needed a ring job. It smoked, and he had to trade it in. So he traded it in to Dad on a 34 Chevrolet that Dad had overhauled, painted, and like a new car.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, about 6 guys in town wanted that old car. And Dad was having a hell of a time. I mean, some of the guys were good friends, and how's he going to do this? If he sells it to one of them, he's going to make
5 of them
mad. So he says, the hell with it, I'll give it to the junkyard, to school. I'll donate it to the school. He even thought of keeping it, but since there was another Chevy garage in town, but he would have probably kept it otherwise. But a bit of Pontiac, I think he might have. But anyway, he donated that to the scrap drive. So he had 6 people mad at him. Not quite as mad as if he'd have sold it to one, And I was mad because I wanted that old car myself, because in a couple of years I would be able to drive it. Well, at 14 you could drive, and
Yes.
I think I was 13 at the time, just about 14. That but he says you'll get licensed when you're 21. It was all right if I wanted to drive the wrecker down to pull a guy out at the edge of town or something, out of a ditch or something. Yeah, that was funny how that went.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So did you go to the same school all
I went.
all 12 grades?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I quit my junior year.
Okay.
Well, I flunked algebra and typing.
Yeah.
First time I ever flunked anything in school, and that was just too much.
Well, algebra was a pain in the neck.
Well, I
sometimes.
couldn't understand
Well,
it whatsoever.
Yeah, you made out really good if you had a teacher that knew how to teach it.
Yeah,
But
well,
if you didn't have a teacher that knew how to teach algebra,
well, then
you
if
was
you
lost.
don't get along with the teacher,
That's right.
that don't help either.
That's right.
So.
And typing it by the looks of your hands
And both,
and mine.
and the same
Yeah.
teacher was both subjects.
Oh,
There you go.
So
that made sense,
that
didn't it?
might have, that might have had something to do with it. So I said, the hell with it. I
Yeah.
went.
So where were you when Pearl Harbor happened? Do you remember?
41.
Yeah.
It was December the 7th. It was at home,
Okay.
and but it seems like
Do you remember what your dad said or anything?
we heard it on the radio, I think, but
Yeah.
I couldn't. And then I know the next day we got the paper. He was reading about that,
You bet.
and yeah. See, Dad went to Canada. He left in 1910 with Granddad, and they homesteaded in Canada by Roblin, Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
And they broke prairie for a living with Romley tractors and such.
Okay. Yeah.
And they would pull 16 bottom plows for 8-mile furrows
Really?
when they were breaking prairie. And then
what do you mean by breaking prairie?
just flat land.
Oh, okay.
And
Just plow it.
they wanted it plowed,
Oh,
and
okay.
then they're going to put crops in, or whatever. But anyway, that's what they do. He says, like in a cold morning, he says those old Romleys, you could hear them for 5 miles when they fired off, you know, like that. And he says we'd make a trip down and back, and it's time for dinner.
So you
And
could
we'd ma-
homestead back then?
Yeah, they
Canada.
homestead, but the homestead, that was just a place to live. Their job was breaking prairie. That's what they did. And then from 1910 to 1925, Dad came back to the States, and he worked. He worked for, had friends down there in Illinois that when he left, they were friends, you know, the family, and so he was staying at this one fella, and he did the milking and all that to pay for his
Yeah.
board. He worked at Quincy Compressor. Well, it was electric and wheel at that time. They make compressors now, I
Yeah.
guess, and water pumps and different things. So he worked there from 25 to 27 because he bought he was then on the side on the weekend he worked for these guys from Saturday afternoon to and Sundays. If they had work, he would work in the garage for these two partners. And the garage was originally a skating rink in town.
Yeah.
And they had converted it to a garage. So he bought that from him in 27, or 26, latter part of 26, he bought the garage. He didn't have the money. He had been saving his money diligently, but he knew they were not getting along, the partners, and the place would be up for sale eventually. He knew that. So he was saving money and must have made good contacts because the guy he lived and did the milking for, you know, or whatever, and worked on the farm sometimes. Well, he loaned him some money to go with what he had for a down payment on that garage. And that was the garage and the house on the corner, the big house. So he bought that. It was 22,000 or something back then. Of course, that was a fortune by the time 27 he got married, and then 29 the crash, and then me coming along 30. I think I would probably be tearing my hair out wondering what I was going to do. But he didn't lose the place, and in 1952, well, I joined service in 47, then I signed over in 50, and I was in Korea a month before the war. So we had stopped at Incheon and rode a train over. So anyway, I knew there was going to be a war, so I signed over for 6. But anyway, my brother, he went in. So by 52, there was just him, and he didn't know but what my brother'd stay in service, Seabees. So he sold out in 52. And what he got out of the equipment that he had in the garage, 21,000 and something, was just about what he paid for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And all through the years in the 30s, all he could make was the interest payments. But he wasn't going to lose it. And I've seen him out there 16 hours a day working. I mean, he didn't, like in the winter time, there wouldn't be enough work for, he had 2 mechanics, but one he'd have to lay off for the winter, and one he kept part-time, which the guy didn't care, you know.
Yeah.
Because he had other little jobs, and it worked out good. The head mechanic that he had working for him, it worked out for them, you know. So what we did in the winter mainly was store cars for the people in town. They had now the grocery store had a steak truck and another truck. Then there was the Leggett's Lumber Yard. They had a big truck. They parked in there in the winter, and people would store their cars. Some of them pay by the month, and others just overnight. You know, if it was extra cold, they would.
Sure.
But that was a good source of income. And then there was other things like he rebuilt batteries there after 42. You know, you couldn't buy batteries where the dams.
Right.
He'd rebuild them, and some of his rebuilt ones guaranteed him 90 days or 6 months, and it charged $3, I think it was, if I remember. And some of them lasted 3 years, you know.
Yeah.
And hell, they always wanted another. You got any more of those $3 batteries? No, not right at the time. I get them, and sometimes, you know, we'd save them up every year, all the batteries, and then they'd charge them up, and you'd see which cells were good and which weren't. Then you'd switch them around and all that, and then that was another source of income. He rebuilt the fuel pumps and the generators, starters, and stuff like that. You know, I mean, any way you could make $1, you had to think about it, and that was what they did in the winter to keep busy. Plus haul coal, stoker coal. We had a stoker in the house, and we'd haul 30 to 5 ton, I guess, and put in the basement, and that'd usually hold us for the winter. Out in the garage, though, he couldn't store too much, and we had 2 furnaces there, so he was going a lot for coal. I had to go about 40 miles to, I think it was Peru, Illinois. They had coal mines, strip mines up there. So he got him an old Ford pickup, and he'd go up there and haul coal on it, you know, after work or when he had time. And kept things going that way.
So tell us about when you joined the service. Where did you join, and where did you go?
Well, yeah, see, in 47 when I quit, when I was around the house there, the second day he says, are you sick? I said, no. Well, how come you're home? I said, I quit school. Oh, you did? He says, damn, come with me. I got a job for you out in the garage.
You didn't expect that.
No, I didn't expect it that soon. I thought I might get a little chance to take a rest. He said, yeah. And then they started me scraping grease spots off of the cement floor, and where they put either sawdust or ashes. And then I washed cars, and then whenever they had parts, you know, if they're overhauling something and parts got to be washed, that was my job. Clean these up. Oh boy. And then with gasoline in the down in the corner there was a drain, and we did that. Back now, you couldn't do that.
That's
you
right.
know? A lot of water and gas went down the drain, so why they didn't have a blow up somewhere. And I washed cars in summer. I washed cars outside the back of the garage there. And when he painted cars, he would paint cars, and like he'd go to Chicago, and he and this farmer was a good friend, and they were both Eagles, and Dad didn't drink or smoke, but he was an Eagle.
That's unique, isn't it?
What, 1941, yeah, I remember, or 42.
What is an eagle?
Like the
Fraternity
moose and
Order of Eagles.
Oh,
like the moose in the Alps.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
And it was 42 or 3 sometime there. This one guy, the grocer, he went and joined the service. Went in the Army for a couple of years there, and he come home on leave. So it was right about New Year's Eve down there in Quincy, was where the lodge was. And then there was another guy, Pete Shelton. He run the Shell station down on the main road through the middle of town. And those 3, they were all Eagles, and there were characters evidently, because they had slot machines back then still. And they were uptown, and there was a square in town, and they were hooting and hollering up there, and they hauled them in for disturbing the peace, and they paid their fines out of their pockets change that they had been winning on the slot machines. I remember they poured Dad in about 4 o'clock in the morning. They brought him home, and they poured him in day bed, you know. And I said, well, what's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, no, never mind. You know, Dad don't feel good or something. He didn't feel good the next day either. So they must have talked him into having a couple.
Yeah.
Because he was funny. He couldn't drink. We'd go to Nauvoo, Illinois. They'd have a festival up there for a week. And they made grapes up there. And that was the jumping off place for the Mormons, you know, before they went to Missouri, St. Joe or wherever they went next. But they had, big Concord grapes. It was wonderful and all that. And people liked the wine. And you could go right down the street with a gallon on your finger and nobody say anything. But if you was drinking and it was in the car, you're going to pay a couple $100 fine.
Really?
Yeah, they'd hit them there. So they didn't have too much trouble that way, believe it or not.
Right.
Everybody was happy and all that, and that would last all week. Dad'd bring home a couple jugs of that, the white and the Concord.
So he
Yeah.
started drinking a little bit.
No, he kept it in the
Oh.
in the desk, you know, down there in the lower part of the desk. And when sometimes when some of his good friends, that salesmen or something, come, and they might have a glass, you know. But normally he didn't. But one time he got a snoot full. I don't know, something happened, you know, or there was nothing happening probably, and he just bored and it was at noontime. Ma had a bell to ring for the garage and dinner's on. Well, he never come to dinner. So about 10 minutes later, she rang it again. Man, when she went to get him, she brought him home all right. He had enough. He'd had enough, so I remember he took the afternoon off. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But
now-
Dad, he couldn't drink, you know. You give him a bottle of beer and he's giggly as a high school girl.
So
Yeah.
did you enlist, or did you?
Yeah.
You enlisted?
Yeah, I did when I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you go first?
I enlisted in Quincy, Illinois, and then they sent me later, a couple weeks later, to St. Louis.
Okay.
And then from St. Louis, they put us. I was with about 15 guys, 20 guys, and Seaman in charge. He was in World War II, and he was just big drunk as the rest of us. So going across on that Pacific Flyer, that was a couple-day trip, you know.
So you joined the Navy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We was going to San Diego, but that trip was to Los Angeles, and then we went from there by bus to San Diego to the
Okay.
boot camp,
Yeah.
and that was right beside the Marines. When I and two other guys, we were going to join the Marines, they wouldn't have me or them either. They evidently didn't need anybody. They told me because I'd been shot before, they didn't think I could do the job, marching, trooping and stomping, you know. And then when I got down to San Diego and I saw all those Marines all the time, and marching all the time, I said, oh boy, am I glad I didn't get in there. Because we'd go to classes, you know, and we weren't out there marching all the time. We had enough of that on Saturdays at the grinder when they had an inspection and all. But
So your boot camp was in San Diego?
yeah, in the hottest 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
It was July, August, and September.
Oh, wow.
I do remember we were out on the grinder. A lot of times people just pass out right beside you. You can't. You just look up. You don't do nothing. Just leave them.
Just leave them there,
Yep.
huh?
And
Somebody else come pick them up.
One time we were standing there at parade rest, and I don't know, just happened to look up. Damn, there's a car. It was a car. And a flying. I couldn't believe this. It looked like a little Crosley with short wings.
Yeah.
And it was flying all around, you know, not fast, just slow, cruising around and taking all this in.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I've seen a flying car. But
Uh-huh. That, you know, I bet you that you tell most people that they'd think you'd been drinking.
Well, I thought I was crazy from the heat myself.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
they, back in the 40s, late 40s, they had
Yeah.
a car
Well, now
that you could outfit with
the
wings.
next
and
time I
everything.
got shocked was when in '64 when I came back here to Michigan. I lived at Linwood Beach.
Uh-huh.
My sister-in-law had a cabin out there, so she rented that to us. And by golly, one day I'm coming home from town and I see this car. It looks like about like a '56 Ford Fairlane Victoria, you know, the straight fence come back, and it was a convertible. And this guy just drove right off the dock and started going right down the water, going
Yeah.
on the water. I said, my God.
Look at that.
I don't. Well, I'd stopped at the bar and had a couple, but I said, "Damn, I know I'm not loaded." That was another shock. I'd
Yeah,
never
I bet
seen
it
nothing
was,
like
yeah.
that. I always wanted one of them cars, but I never did see one for sale. That's like Crown Victoria out in
Yeah.
California. I always wanted to get a Crown Victoria. And damn, every time I'd see one on the lot, like 57 and 58, but the 55 Crown is what I wanted. And I'll be damned, I'd go and I'd say, can I put $100 down or $50 down on it, and I'll be back. I have to go to the credit union to get money, you know. No, won't be here tomorrow. Guarantee you that. Just the way it works. And they were that scarce, and
Yeah.
3 times that happened to me. So I came back in '64, but '69 this guy had one of those. He had one of those Crown Victorias, and it was a Denver car, and he had painted it. It wasn't rusted out bad or nothing. He had worked it over and leaded it in like it
Yeah.
should have been. And I bought it from him for, he didn't give much, but I gave him $550 for it. And at the time I was laid off, I took my unemployment check and I took the money back from the government, and I bought that car. Well, I wanted it so bad,
Yeah.
and I'd been trying to get one all those years. And my wife she had plans for that money, and she was a little miffed about it. She hated that car from the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, I know it. I know all about that.
And then when her mother backed into the door, well, she wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have bought it, you know, one of them things.
Yeah.
So she didn't, just scratched it and put a dent in it, but I could have had it banged out. But it wasn't hurt. And that car, it got to where it wouldn't start in the spring, about April, when it was rainy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little block on the firewall that changed from 6 to 12 volt for
Yeah.
starting.
Mhm.
Well, that thing wasn't working, and I'd grind the battery down just about dead before it'd start. I got where I didn't drive it no more, and I just parked it out by the garage, and I was driving a '67 Lemons, one of them Pontiac Lemons,
Mhm.
Le Mans.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were lemons, because I found out that they were guaranteed for 50,000, but they usually went to hell at 49,000. More than not, believe it or
Really?
not, they had it down that close. I saw one that went 51,000 before it puked. But anyway,
So let's get back to being in your boot camp in San Diego.
yeah.
Where did you go after that?
I went to when I was out of boot camp. I wanted to be a diesel mechanic because Dad had a garage, and I didn't know anything about diesel. And I thought it'd be great if I learned it, because we have
Sure.
buses come through there all the time, and once in a while a bus would have problems. So I thought if I knew, it might help. I've planned on coming back to and all that. But anyway, they sent me to electrician school. They said I'd make a better electrician. Well, when I was I was about 9, 10, somewhere along in there. We used to go in old abandoned homes. There was 2 or 3 in town, and we used to go up in the attic, and we found a couple pistols, you know, that when they were no good, they'd throw them up in the attic so the kids wouldn't get them and get hurt or anything. Well, we found a couple, one in one of them old homes, so we were going to go in this old home, and it still had power on it. I grabbed the wires. I'm on this guy's shoulder. I grabbed the wires to pull myself up. Oh, I burned my hands. Good thing, because it shocked him, and he fell, and I fell. Or we'd have been electrocuted. We'd have been hanging on, you know, electrocuted probably. Oh boy. So then they want to make me an electrician, mate. No way. I didn't want no part of it. And I told them I'm deathly afraid of electricity. A poke on the car unnerves me. And they said, well, you make a better one because you'd be more careful. Yeah, I wouldn't get nothing done. Sure, be careful. So anyway, they insisted that I go, and I went 6 weeks. Everything was good up till the 6th week. That's when algebra come up. Well, then they kept me 3 weeks so I could go to night school.
Teach you algebra.
To learn algebra. Trigonometry come the 7th week. Well, if I'd ever got algebra, that'd been a miracle. And then I'd had trigonometry to wonder about the rest of my life, you know. So anyway, I made 9 weeks of a 14-week course. And they says, well, you're still an electrician striker. You can go aboard ship and learn, you know. I says, I don't want this, but they insisted. And then they, I says, well, if I've got to do it, I'm going to join, I want to try to get on a sub. That's 50% more pay.
Yeah.
I says, I might as well do that. So I went to see about a sub draft that was coming in 10 days. And the lieutenant commander, I think he was a doctor. And anyway, he was to examine me, and everything be going great, you know. And he said, why do you or pee the bed? I says, I don't. And every once in a while you do that. And boy, you know, what's with him? And well, he's just trying to feel me out of it. Now, if I had a short fuse, probably,
Yeah.
but I thought, my God, what's wrong with this guy? So he says, okay. He says, there'll be a draft come in 10 days, but if another draft comes in, you're going to have to take it. So 5 days later, this draft came in for me to go to, otherwise I would have went to New London, you know, Connecticut. So anyway, the draft come in for NAF Opama, Naval Air Facility, Opama. And there they were shooting off loons, larks, and KDs, and a few other things, you know.
Birds, huh?
And they'd have a plane already up there doing 500, 600 miles an hour when they shot them off. And they'd have us in the crash boats waiting around to keep shipping out. And then if them things went crazy or something, they could shoot them down, you know. Well, anyway, when I got there, when I got to Point Magoo, it was all Quonset huts.
Yeah.
And right there on the beach, you know. And they had an airstrip there and all that, but it wasn't nothing fancy. Not a place when they said they're going to transfer me to crash boats, hell, I'd rather live on a boat than in old Quonset huts anyway. And they didn't need any electricians. They had all they needed there.
Good, huh?
Yeah, they had all electricians, not strikers, you know. And so I get over to the crash boats. There was a chief in charge, I think, and there was 12, a dozen of us or more. There wasn't many. And we had all these boats. There was four PT boats, 4 AVRs, I think probably 4 LCPRs, landing craft, you know, little ones, and 4 LCMs. And about everything was 4 of, except the LCU. landing craft utility. That was about 100 foot, 110 foot or what. And they used to take supplies to San Nicolas Island, 56 miles down towards San Diego or Long Beach, down that way. And they'd take supplies down there on that LCU. So then we had, there was a boat that they sometimes fired KDs off of, had a catapult on this 110-foot. It's like a patrol craft. It was not too wide a beam, but kind of a long, it was something, I don't know. It had been a patrol craft or something. And they had a catapult on that. We never used it but once, I think, all the time I was there.
Needless to say, you did not get in the submarines.
No, never did. Never did. I'd have probably went nuts, like a squirrel caged up.
Didn't seem like you got what you wanted while you was in there.
No, I got everything but. Oh, but it was good duty. I mean, I met a lot of good guys, you know, and they didn't care either about, no, they just do their job. And that crash boats, we'd go out, keep the shipping out, you know, of area off Port Hueneme there. And so it was good. I thought it was good training. It was good, you know. And there was one time we used to go out to. One time we took some guys out to Anacapa Island. That was a Coast Guard station, and they just had a little landing deal. It was hard to set them off on that so they could go up to the lighthouse. But another time, they were building a radio station out on Santa Cruz Island, and we used to take civilians out there. But all these civilians were ex-service, so I guess because they knew they wouldn't have as much trouble with them, you know. And they would go out to Santa Cruz Island. That was about 25 miles out from Port Hueneme. And we'd take them out there on a Monday morning, 9 o'clock, and then we'd pick them up. We might go out to the island at 12 o'clock, tie up at the wharf there. They had a wharf. And we'd tie up there, and then we'd wait for them whenever they were ready to go back to the mainland, and then we'd haul them back to the mainland.
Same day.
Same day, yeah. It'd be 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
as an average, 3:30. So we'd fish or whatever. Sometimes you used to get some abalone there. And we had a fisherman friend that used to let us have lobster occasionally.
Oh, wow. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So after that duty, where did you go?
From there, I went aboard the USS Buck destroyer, 761. And that was, I think that was about February, I can't remember. They were in dry dock in San Francisco. And I went aboard that. And then we went overseas, and we went, I know we were in Seoul, or Incheon, just a month before the war.
Okay.
And when we went to Seoul, I had a scrapbook that was probably about like this, and about that thick.
Oh, wow.
And I took pictures everywhere I went, and all that. And I had that beautiful scrapbook, and first fire, I lost that first house fire. Boy, and there was pictures there nobody ever could get, you know, unless you was there. It was action pictures sometimes.
My.
And I had a Argus C3 when I first started out. And then I went to a guy hocked a Minolta for $20 to me and took off and left it with me. I was a little mad, but then I started using it, and I said, boy, now this is
a nice camera.
a nice camera. Yeah, I like that. And I took a lot of nice pictures.
Yeah, and they all disappeared in the fires.
Yeah, well, I never had any duplicates or none, you know, I never,
Sure.
never thought to have one, duplicates made to put,
Yeah.
well, I might have give some away, but,
So now you went, you was in Sewell.
I had some pictures up in my locker, I forgot.
Yeah.
I had one of me on a AKA 104,
Okay.
the Seminole, that was the last duty I had.
Yeah.
I had a picture of me on there 53 years ago. I was standing on the deck there.
Think you was a little thinner then?
No,
No,
believe it
no.
or not, I look about the same.
Okay. So
So,
now you're in Korea,
and
it's
we
just a little
went,
bit before the war started.
yeah, we took the train from Incheon to Seoul to the train station. We got off at the train station, then went down the boulevard long ways, and I saw down about near the end was about a 3 or 4 deck department store. They had everything in there, and it's unbelievable to run across that. I must have spent 2 or 3 hours in there just
Just looking around.
window shopping. Yeah, I could have had a bearskin rug. They had black bear. I think was about $50. They had brown bear. That was around $90, and the polar bear. I think they wanted $125 for. They were reasonable, I
Yeah.
guess. You know, even then, I thought that was pretty reasonable if you needed a bearskin rug.
Yeah.
And what I did buy, I bought some silver buttons there.
Yeah.
About so big around. Because I had, when I was in Hong Kong, I had bought some brocade for my sister's formal. She was graduating that year. So I bought, I think I had wrote home how many yards she would need. And 4 yards I think I got or something, I don't know. But anyway, 4 or 5 yards. It was only, I think it was about $1 a yard, or you know, $6.30 for $1 Hong Kong.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
$6.30 Hong Kong for $1, and I think this yardage was $5.50 per yard. So it was,
Less than $1 a yard.
yeah, and it was heavy stuff and beautiful. It was green with black half moons, like it was really something. And then I picked up a synthetic ruby that had a half pearl on an 18-karat carriage. I bought that probably in Japan from a guy when we were in dry dock one time, and he sold that to me, I think, for maybe I might have traded a carton of cigarettes for that.
Jeez.
It was quite reasonable. When I got back to the States, I asked the jeweler what that was worth. He says, I've got one just like it, only it don't have a half pearl on the side, and I want $37.50 for mine, so yours is probably $50 ring. But he says it ain't what you think it is. It's a synthetic ring. It could be India, it could be Hong Kong, but the pearl is Japanese, the half pearl is Japanese, and the carriage is English. 18 karat.
Yeah.
And another time I was in Hong Kong, I met this Canadian sailor. I was eating in a damn place right off the dock there at Queen's Landing, and this Canadian was next to me, and he said, where are you going this afternoon? I said, I'm just looking around. That's all I'm doing. He says, I'm off of the frigate out here, the Cayuga. And got talking. He was from Yorkton, Saskatchewan. Well, that was pretty close to Roblin, Manitoba, just on the border on the line there. I'd heard my granddad speak of Yorkton a lot, so we got talking. He said, I've heard that name, the Von Holt name, so way back from his folks or something. So we got along real fine. He says, well, he says, I can show you the town if you want to go. We started out at the Grand Hotel. He bought a jug of Canadian Club for 2.5. And then we went down, it might have been New Year's. They was having some kind of a conflab down further way down. They had tent shows, guys swallowing, sword
Yeah.
swallowers, and all kinds of snake and all that, man. And we went in there. Well, first we went to eat. He said, it was about 5, 6 o'clock. And he says, are you hungry? Do you like fish? I said, yeah. Well, he says, I know this little restaurant is just a block or so from here. And I've ate there before, it's good. So we go in, and he says, now come along. We go around the back, and around through the tables, and in the back was about like this room here, and about maybe that deep. And then they got spears hanging up there, and you just grab a spear and get the one you want, and they'll take and fix him right up for you.
Really?
Fix you a dinner.
That's what you call fresh fish,
That's
isn't it?
fresh fish. Looked like an old carp, but who the hell cares? I've ate carp before off the Mississippi
Yeah.
River. They ain't that bad. And so they fixed them up, and then we had a Coke piece for mix, for our whiskey. Damn, while we were waiting for him to fix the dinner, we about finished that, and we was getting pretty well along there. And good thing they brought that dinner. It was a good one,
Yeah.
and they only charged us for 2 Cokes, I think it was, and then it was about $3 for
the dinner and
the
everything?
whole damn deal.
Wow.
And 2 Cokes thrown
Yeah.
in. So that was quite reasonable. But see, when I was with him, he knew where to go.
Yeah.
And then people knew him. Some of them knew him, and
Yeah.
they knew that the Canadians make more money than the English, but they still wasn't holding him up because of that. And actually, I would have spent as much on my own as what we spent, the 2 of us, or what
Yeah.
a lot of it I spent where he didn't. I said, no, don't worry about it, because it was so cheap, And then he says, I was telling him about my sister graduating. He said, oh, I know a guy up, when you go up these steps a ways and then over a few houses, he's got all kinds of jewelry. Now this is 50, and in 49, all them people flee in the mainland. Well, they brought their jewelry with them, and gold and different things, rings and such. And so anyway, he says, I've got some good deals here in the last few months. And so I go up with him, and I bought a Alexandrite ring, and I paid $7.50. Well, it was equivalent to half American, only Hong Kong. And it was a nice square, 10 by 11 or something like that, 10 by 12 I think it was, and it was a nice one. 10 karat gold though. It was low on the gold. But anyway, I never knew if it was real or not, but I'm telling you, when you was in different lighting, it did what it was supposed to do as an Alexandrite. And in 1950, Alexandrites they told the Russians shut off Alexandrites leaving the country. And so I might have had a real one, didn't know it, but when we got to the Philippines, this bartender kept looking at that thing, and he'd say, do you want to sell that ring? I says, no. He says, I'll give you $45 for it. Well, I says, that's worth more than that. You know that. Well, yeah, he says, I just wondered if you want to sell it. I got $90 out of that for left there. Yeah. I couldn't believe it.
Keep going on that Korea thing. I gotta go to the restaurant.
Okay, so, what did you do, how long was it before the war started then?
about a month later. In fact, it had started, well, see, when I was in Korea when I was in Korea, the last place I was a 7-7 bar, and it was just down from the American Embassy. And I had taken pictures before, and then I just happened to go into this bar and went downstairs. It was just one level down. And I was sitting there and sipping on drinks, and then I realized I was running out of yen or won. And about that time, this guy come in with a briefcase, and he sat down by me and said hello, spoke good English, and he was Korean. And I says, well, he introduced himself.
We'll be done in a few minutes. We'll be done in a few minutes.
He introduced himself and all, and I don't remember what his name was now, but he started talking. He says, yeah, he says, I work at the American Embassy. And I says, yeah. I says, well, I says, I need to get some exchange, to get some won. I'm running out. I says, and I still got a couple hour or so to go. And he says, well, what do you want to exchange? I says, well, all I've got is a $5 American bill that I had tucked in my wallet. I says, well, he says, I'll exchange it for you. So the rate of exchange, I think, it seems like it was 105 for a dollar. And he gave me like 151 for a dollar, per dollar. Well, I thought that was fine, so I bought him a couple drinks, and that way I had enough and got rid of it and all that, and we had a good talk, and he said that he worked at the embassy, and I don't remember what he did, but anyway, he says, when I go home, he says, infiltrators, he says, I says, something don't seem right down around here. The people aren't hubbub, they're not going like, they don't have the will to go. Oh no, he says, you're right there. He says, there's infiltrators already down in Seoul, and people, they know it, they know something ain't right. And he said, I says, in other words, you think maybe there's going to be a war? He says, yeah. He says, maybe in another month or a couple of weeks or a month, who knows? But I said, well, why in the hell aren't they getting ready for it? No, he says they can't get ready for it because then they would twist it around that we started it. So they knew, they had a good idea that it was going to happen, and all they could do is just wait till then.
So after that, what did you do?
I had all these pictures that I'd taken of the buildings before the war, and then later I saw these the bank building, the department store, and the embassy, and one other building. I had pictures of them, and here I saw in the Stars and Stripes where they were bombed out.
Yeah.
I had comparison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I hated to lose that. And then I had wrote a letter home to my mother, just taking a chance, I says, don't tell nobody, but there's going to be a war over here in about a month. I just guessing like the fellow that I had talked to, and I believed it too. Very possible, because nothing was right. People in Japan, everything's hubbub, in Japan, not in Seoul. It was slowed
So it was about a
down.
month then.
About a month before the war, yeah. Then,
So how did you find out?
well, I got out of the Navy about 3 days after the war started.
Okay.
I think that's when I got out. Then I went to town, and I tried to get a job on a Standard oil tanker, and they said, okay. I went there on Market Street, and I went up 3 or 4 flights, I don't remember what floor, but up in this big tall building. And this guy, he was interested in hiring me, and he says to his secretary to go cut a check for New Orleans for this guy to go catch a tanker down there. And then he looks at to make sure everything is all right, he's looking at my discharge. He said, "Well, you're only 20. I can't hire you. You got to be 21."
Aw.
I said, "Oh, no. Yeah, okay." So he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "I thought I had a good feller for the tanker." So that's all right, I says. And then I go down Skid Row where I could drink when I was 20. You know, I knew a guy, bartender, Jim Riley. He got out of the Army in 1918, and he said I just stayed here until I lost everything and had to go to work as a bartender, and I've been doing that ever since, he says. And you know, it's kind of cruel down there, people sleeping in the front of the store buildings, you know. And then when they get up and a paddy wagon comes down through there, and they won't take you to jail. They're kicking you out. They won't let you in the paddy wagon. Now, things are tough, you know. I seen that, and I couldn't believe it. I'm trying to keep out of there.
The guys are trying to get in.
Yeah, guys were running down behind the paddy wagon, want to get in. They'd had them before, and dried them out, and don't do no good. They went right back. So, anyway, Jim says, "There's a guy a couple blocks down the road. He's got a machine shop." And he says, I'll call him if you want to go down and talk to him. You ever think about machinist apprentice?" I said, "I've thought about it before, because my dad was a machinist." He says, "Well, hell, go down and talk to him." I go down and talk to the guy. He says, "Yeah, I'll hire you as a machinist apprentice, but you got to go to the union hall and get a card." So I go to the union hall to get a card, and they tell me, "Do you have a job as an apprentice?" I says, "Yeah, as soon as you issue me a union card." "Well, we can't do that. You've got to have a job before you can." I says, "Well, what kind of rat race is this?" Oh, that did it. I went down there for 2 days. I had a real bender going. Then I says, "The hell with this." I sobered up, went back to ship still and dry dock. I signed for 6 years. I know where I'm going to be the next 6.
There you go.
So you got in on the war.
Yeah.
So what did you do during the war?
I was just a seaman. When I at NAF, when I was detached to Port Hueneme as a striker, electrician striker, we got an officer, a Lieutenant JG, and he had a habit of flying his plane on the weekend, and he'd come over and he wanted the battery charged up real fast at noon, and he wants to leave at 3 or 3:30. And I says, "I'll put it on, but I don't know how high it's going to be." It was a searchlight battery, and he used it for flying these model airplanes. So anyway, as he come in, I was in a hurry. I had the weekend off, and I was going up to Thousand Oaks, and doggone it, I thought I had it off, all the clicks off on the damn charger, but there was one click, just enough for a spark.
Mm-hmm.
And your poster this far apart, and in the middle is the touch hole for the hydrogen gas to escape. And oh boy, I had been charging it kind of high, and when that spark hit, it was like a shotgun shell went off. It hit that gas. Everything went forward though. I had an apron on, but everything went forward up against the wall, and all I'm holding is the 2 posts. I said, "Sir, I don't know what to say." Well, he knew what to say.
I bet he did.
He stomped out of there, didn't say a word, but Monday, I had a new job. They had an AVR, 64-foot aviation rescue boat up on skids up on the dock, And they were planning, but the crew was gonna clean that bottom up and repaint it and all. So that was my job. I did it from start to finish, and it took over a week. And that copper paint, oh man, that stuff so stick. Oh, it was terrible. I never thought I thought my arms going to fall off before I ever got that job done. But anyway, I was a seaman. They made me a seaman out of that deal.
On a rescue ship.
Oh boy, that was all right. Yeah, on that boat.
So did you rescue anybody?
Well, not really. We used to go out at times on the boats. We'd go out and keep shipping clear when they shot those loons and larks off from Point Magoo. And
So did you ever see any actual fighting and stuff?
not on them boats, but then when I got aboard the destroyer, when I got aboard on a PT boat one time we had a emergency. We had to go somewhere. In a block's time we had went.
Gonna have to change it.
I bet you it wasn't over a block, and we were doing
Right.
45 knots, but we couldn't go any faster because we didn't have the weight of the torpedo tubes on it. So 45, about 50 knots, 55 is all that would do.
No.
But then, when I got aboard the destroyer, we went to Korea a good many times. I think the destroyer, we had 5 stars, 5 battle stars. We'd be up there for 30 days, and then we would go into port somewhere, who knows where, not always Japan. Sometimes we'd go to Philippines, Subic Bay, sometimes Hong Kong.
Was
So,
you ever shot at?
No,
No?
not, one time we went up, they said it was some little river, I don't know, above the 38th parallel. They brought 2 Rook Marines over, bumboats, and there was Rook Marines in that, and one was towing the other. And then when we got our landing force, we had about 15 guys in the landing force there, and we went up in the our whale boat, and we towed them. And we got into this river. They didn't know what was in there, but they did open up. After we got in there, they opened up with small arms and the searchlights, And hell, we just like sitting ducks out there in that river. And they were shooting with small arms, burp guns and such. And I just felt like bees flying by, I couldn't get lower in the boat.
Anybody get hit?
One of the Rook Marines in the back got shot through the stomach.
Oh my.
Yeah. That
So
was,
you
the
got
only,
out
that
of
was the
there.
only casualty.
Mhm.
And, we just no sooner got in when they opened up with searchlights. They said they thought they had a lot of big guns up there. Wow, that was the stupidest thing I ever heard of. We'd go up there. If they had big guns, we wouldn't, never got out of there.
No, you sure wouldn't.
Oh, it was bad enough with just burp guns.
Yeah.
So did you stay on the destroyer the rest of the war?
I was on to the later part of 53, and I put in for Japan for shore duty, and they said they couldn't spare me. Beats the hell out of me why they couldn't spare me. So 3 days later, we were still in Yokosuka Harbor there. 3 days later, they posted a world trip. Somebody's taking a world cruise. Well, by God, I looked that over good. I was eligible for that. So I told him, I said, well, that's all right. I didn't want to go to Japan as bad. I'd rather go on this world cruise. That sounds like a lot of fun. Then next day, I got my shore duty.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you was stationed where then?
NAF Opama. That was just across the bay from Yokosuka a little bit. About 6 miles, 10 miles north of Yokosuka.
So how long did you stay there?
2 years. When I went there, they started me out in the crash boats. and I was in the crash. No, I guess maybe, no, I think they started me in the crash boats, then they put me down in the firehouse. I was a fireman for 3 or 4 months, I think. And they had a chief that whenever you're on 24, you're off 24. And we had a chief that if you had the duty, you know you were going to be on a false run, and because he'd go up to PX and get slopped up, and time for a fire drill. So we'd have a fire drill, you know, before 2 o'clock, 2, 3 o'clock, and then we could spend the rest of the evening washing the hose down before we turned in. And then, but then that wasn't too bad a deal. So then I went to the crash boats. I was there a little bit, and then they said, would you like to go to security? Well, see, they had a colonel that was over the Marines, and all of they had the main gate. Well, the Marines were writing everybody up for some damn reason for little or nothing. And so the captain of the base had more time than the colonel, and he said, I think it'd be nice for you guys to take that gate right next to the main gate. It was about wide as the room. And the main gate was big main gate, you know. He says, I think that'd be nice, you guys take that and you can run it any way you want. And then we stood gate guard with the Army, the Navy did. And we'd done 8-hour watches. And then when I got security there with the Army, standing guard with the Army, well, anytime you're off duty, you can stay in town. So I had down in Yokosuka, I had a place to stay, a room. It cost $15 a month, I remember. And anytime I didn't have the duty, I was there. And it cost, when you had the duty, you had to be there a half hour before you stand your watch. And that's so they know you're there and you're ready to go. And then we would be off 36 hours, then then 42 hours, and then it'd be 70, 48, and then 72 hours. When we'd have 72 hours off, usually one of your buddies would stand that next 36 hour, or that 8 hours for you to get 36 more. So we'd do that for one another, and it worked out good. We had a lot of time off, and any time that you're off, you don't have to come back to the base for inspection either. So, and if you stay on the base, oh man, you may get all details and who knows what, you know.
So how long was you there?
I was there 2 years.
So, when was you sent back to the
From
States?
53 to 55, there the latter part of 55, I came back to the States. They sent me to, well, when they shipped us back from Opama, we got the plane in Tokyo, or I think it was, or Yokohama, and we flew to Hawaii. They give us 6-hour layover so we could go to the PX and have a few, because we were all alcoholics on that damn on that plane. I seen that.
Yeah.
After a little bit, didn't take long to figure that out, because they were all over there with me and we were drinking. So, and in Hawaii, I think I called a fellow up, and he come out to visit me, and I stood guard with him, Army fella, and he was at Schofield Barracks, but his ma told him, and anyway, I got on the plane, and I didn't know nothing until I got to Travis Air Force Base, and there, when they let us out, they got in line, and they had our pay and our orders and everything. We would leave, you know. So then they had a bus to take us to San Francisco if you wanted to go by bus or whatever. And they stopped at Richmond, right conveniently by a liquor store.
All right.
And everybody made that trip over there. And when they told me $7.75 or $8.50, 8.25 or something like that for a fifth of whiskey, I said, man, I know I just come back from overseas, but you don't have to gouge me. He says, no, that's the going price here. I said, well, I'm used to paying $1.35 for a fifth. I says, damn. But I gotta have it, so give me one.
So where did you get discharged at?
San Diego. But then when I went back, I went home on leave, 30 days leave, and when they said I think it was 8.25 or $7.75 for that bottle of whiskey, I said, oh man, it's written right there. I gotta quit. I can't afford it. So that was a hard thing. That month I did the best I could to quit drinking, and couldn't quit. But anyway, I slowed it down to where I could drink all day, and beer and wine that wouldn't even faze me. But I was taking the bus too. I took the bus home so I could get off any time that I felt that I needed. And when I got to Lincoln, Nebraska, I thought I'd better get off because I was getting kind of shaky and one thing and another. So I got off and I went, I got a hotel room right by a bar, and I had a couple double shots, and I said, I ought to be able to sleep now, because I hadn't been drinking, whiskey. So I couldn't sleep, so I went back down to the liquor store and I got a pint and went to sleep then. Next morning I wake up about 10 o'clock and I said, well, I better get on the road. I better get ready and all that. And I'm walking down the street. There's nobody for 2 blocks. Nobody. I've never been in that town before. Somebody says, hey, Jerry, where are you going? I'm looking around. I said, well, I know it's my mind playing tricks, And there wasn't nobody. So I knew it was my mind playing tricks on me. I said, oh, boy, I got to get home fast. So when I took the bus there to Kansas City, and I had my folks come and get me. I ain't taking any chances. I don't know. I haven't seen any snakes or nothing, but damn.
So what did you do when you got home?
Well, all I did, first thing, I had my brother get a fifth of whiskey, and we hid it in the washing machine, because don't know when I might need it, because Mom didn't drink or smoke, or her dad either. So I think he helped me, but we sipped on it, every once in a while. And then in the evening, we'd go out some bar or something, have a few beers and all that. But,
Did you help your dad in the garage then when you got home?
No, I
sold
did.
it.
When I
You
got
sold it by then, hadn't you?
well, when I got out, I had before I was 17, I quit my junior year, and I wasn't 17 till May, so I had I did help him in the garage till then. Of course, in the meantime, things weren't so bad. He had a 41 torpedo coupe, Pontiac, and it was black with red wheels and then wide white walls and a radio. And it was a pretty sharp car. I kind of fell in love with that thing, but I still had to go to service because I had to get my diploma.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have it. I knew if I stayed around there, he was trying to entice me to stay, but he didn't think I ought to go. Then finally, when I was 17, these 2 friends of mine, they went down. We all was going to join the Marines. They wouldn't take us. 2 of us got in the Navy, and then the other one went down the hall to the Air Force. He joined the Air Force. I lasted 9 years. My friend that went in, Navy, he lasted 24 years, come out of Chief Radar Man, and he was out a little over a year, and he died of cancer.
Oh, my.
And then the other one, the guy who went to Air Force, that was overweight. When he come out, 28 years, Air Force, and he last I know he's still living. He's in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
In all that
Yeah.
time, was there ever a special lady? Did you ever get married?
Yeah, he did. I knew it wasn't fair for either one to be married in the service. I didn't feel it was fair for
Yeah.
the people. So I says, I won't be in forever. Or if I am, well, what the heck. Maybe I'll change my mind. But when I got out, when I got out, I had a job on a tugboat up in Seattle. I had 10 days after I got out to be up there to take the job. It was going to pay $250 in my pound and all that. Well, 10 days later, oh boy, when I got out, I got in a crowd of the college kids there in Laguna Beach, and hell, Dad had a place block up the hill there, overlooking the beach, and they had a swimming pool and everything there, and they were partying and everything. So hell, I got in with that crowd and spent about $100 a day, and I'd been saving my winnings from poker all through the years, but I'd saved half of my winnings, and as it turned out, I must have lost a hell of a lot because I only had about 2,500, in 9 years, 2,500, man. So I can figure what I lost. I know a few times I had to borrow from the chief to get through 2 weeks. So anyway, yeah. So when I got out, I stayed there about 4 or 5 days, and I was having a hell of a time. I have to admit, I hated to leave, but it was costing. And I said, I can't go indefinitely here. And then, before I realized it, I'm up in Santa Monica, and I went to Port Hueneme, where I used to go play with the City Fathers, a poker game. Payday's about the only time I could take out $50 takeout, and so I had won a little bit off of them through the years, but it seemed like they got it all back that one night. Well, I didn't drink when I played. I drank very minimal, And I would usually win a few dollars, and they'd let me win a few dollars, but they got her all back then. And then I wake up, more or less, when I got back to Santa Monica, I had a place paid up for a couple of days, 10 days, I think. And damn, I found out that I had $45 to live on. Whoa, boy. So I didn't drink at the Wind and Sea. I went to the corner. There was a little bar. I liked that bar better. And I got to know the bartender pretty good. And he said, I think he was ex-Navy, and he said, well, why don't you go, Douglas Aircraft's hiring out there. Why don't you go out there? So I go out and I hire in, grabbed a bus and went out there, and they hired me. It was 3 days before I could go to work because I had to take physical. I had to go to the draft board. They give me 5F for draft, that was my draft card. So, well, I'd been in 9 years, so no sweat, 4F's good.
Yeah.
You don't have to go 4F, but 5F, that's better. That's for sure. You're pretty safe. So I worked Douglas 4 years, and then went out the door with guys with 30 years in our department, and they finally got rid of everybody, and they had just a skeleton crew there for the next 4 years, and I waited around out there, and I was working at this. Well, I drew my unemployment out and everything, and then I went to work for this gas station as night manager. Jesus, for $1.25 to start out. Wasn't a hell of a lot, but it'd sustain you. Because I had a guest house behind the big house there in Culver City. This guy had been a leader, painter leader. And I knew him from work, and I told him, I says, I need a place to stay. When I went to work at the station. Well, he was laid off. He was working there too, but he was doing mechanic work on the side there. And so he says, well, you need a place? I've got a place down there, the guest house behind the house, $45 a month. And all utilities and all, everything paid, except $5 for the telephone. So I couldn't beat that, and it was knotty pine, and when you're in that, just like being up at Big Bear, you know. Jesus, that was nice. And so I got along good with the fella, and one time I did a tune-up on his 55, 55 Buick, and I did a tune-up on it, and said never run any better. He did a paint job on my 31 Victoria Coupe. I had a Ford Coupe. They had that bored out just as big as they could go, and damn thing would burn rubber in gears, but when you get 55, it'd starve out, you know. And in a block's time, I could be a Cadillac, but I had mechanical brakes, and I'd just go right on through, you know. So I didn't do that very often. But that was some car. And he
So
done
when
a
did you get
beautiful
married?
paint. 1963.
Do you have any kids?
We had one. She lives up on the island. That was Paula,
What island?
Mackinac Island.
Oh, okay.
She married one of the natives up there.
Mm-hmm.
His family been there forever. His granddad was the last blacksmith at the fort before they closed it in
Really?
1895.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Gallagher.
So,
And,
what do you think? How do you think the service affected your life? Did you that you learned or that you took back away from?
well, I met an awful lot of good people, but I don't know. I had some bum times too, but there was a lot of good times. I don't remember those bad times too much.
Well, you
forgot
That's the way to go.
You got quite a bit of experience in
Yeah,
different
you,
things.
you,
Oh
would-
yeah, I got a
you
lot.
learned all about electricity.
No, I didn't learn nothing about that. You just leave it alone. Yeah, I don't know.
So when did you come to the home here?
3 months ago. It was October the 30th. Came from Saginaw. I was there 7 months and 10 days in bed,
Yeah.
as bedridden. And 10 days they got me up for like an hour and a half. Then I rode over in a wheelchair instead of the gurney, like I was going
Yeah.
to Ann Arbor and Detroit at times.
So how do you like it here?
I don't know. I guess all right.
You haven't been here long enough
No.
to enjoy
Well,
all the summer things that they got here.
No, not really. I guess there's a lot more to see and all
Oh,
that.
yes.
But
Oh, yes.
yeah, I'm getting along pretty good. I like their physical training there. I mean, it keeps me occupied, and I was trying to get to where I could walk, you know. And darn it, got spots on my foot there on my heel, and it's not healing worth a darn. And
Do you have diabetes?
I'm a borderline, they call
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I've always been a kind of a borderline, they tell me.
Yeah, well, that whiskey didn't help it any, did it?
That was only, I didn't drink that too long. Took about 6 months to get into the habit, and about a year to get out of the habit, or
Yeah,
so. A year or so to get out of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's nothing that ever make me want to drink whiskey again. I've had a shot once in a while, but as far as drinking that stuff, I know what it'll do. That's not good. I never saw any snakes, but boy, I've seen people that did. Oh boy.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
we'll do a DVD of this and bring it back to you next week, or the next time we
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah, one time we were going through Pearl Harbor, and this was our second time. We'd been overseas once before, and when we came back that time, my friend, he went to the VFW and joined it there in Pearl,
Yeah.
and he wanted me to go with him, and I thought it would be a good idea. I said, no, I don't even want to join the Boy Scouts when I get out. So anyway, he says, okay. He says, you might be missing something. I said, well, okay. So I didn't. And then one time when I was at work, when I worked at a place, this guy, he had been in Germany for 2 years, and he was one of these guys that plays politics, you know.
Yeah.
He was a company politician and all that. And he says, you never joined the VFW or nothing? I said, no, I had no reason to, really. I just figured, I didn't think it was going to benefit me that much, because I was trying to, I'd just probably get in trouble, you know, with my drinking or something. So he says, well, I sure wished I could have joined and all that. He, you know, because he was always trying to benefit himself. He said he joined American Legion. He met a few people, and he got a few extra jobs and stuff and all that. He says, you know, well, hell, I met all kinds of people when I was in service. Hell, one time we was in Beipu. One night, 12 o'clock Liberty, I had a hard time getting back on time sometimes, and doggone,
I can't understand why.
next morning, I wake up, and they herding me. He said, get dressed, and where in the hell am I? And then they had a taxi waiting, and they stuck 500 yen in my pocket, and away I go. And last I remember, I was having a few drinks there, but I was about out of money, and I don't know what happened. But anyway, I get down to the dock, and there goes the M boat going out to. That was when I was on that AKA, and there it goes. Boy, the last boat. The chiefs and officers gone, and here I am. So there's old Papa Son down there with a one-lunger. He's going like that, you know, and I just pointed to this $500 note, and I says, pointed to the ship, and he says, okay, and I get down in the boat, and he's just a-going, you know, like, hell, we got all day to get out there, you know, and that boat's already out there, and people are aboard, and it's starting to take off. And now I'm hollering at him, Hayaku, that's Ikimasho, let's get this thing going. And he's going, oh boy, clouds of smoke, big rings. He got that thing going full blast. And we're just up almost to the fantail. They threw a Jacob's ladder over for me, the guys. And I jumped, I luckily caught it. And the captain's up on the bridge watching all this. And you know, they told me, go down below. And I went below. Nothing was ever said about that. I thought,